Thank you very much for that very kind introduction. It is a wonderful time, and this is a wonderful place for me to visit, here in the heart of technology and broadband and the internet. What I thought I would do is take you through a vision, perhaps, of technology and business and how things might be. As part of the Seoul Digital Forum, it makes perfect sense to talk about new technology, new ideas, and the way the world will be very different because of all the things that we're doing. Next slide. Of course, Google has a very special connection to Korea. Those of you who use Google see the logo that Google has. And the logos have always been done by an extraordinary artist. His name is Dennis Hwang. And Dennis is Korean, went to Stanford, has a computer science degree and an art degree. And he is probably the most visible artist in the whole world, with more people who know his work than anyone else on the planet. And of course, he's here in Korea today. Next slide. It's obvious to me that Korea is a great laboratory of the digital age. You all know this, but you have essentially and very cleverly used broadband penetration to further your business, your social goals, and a remarkable country achievement to the point where you are well above 80% of broadband penetration for wired households. You're approaching saturation in your wireless networks. The combination of the two makes Korea likely to be one of the great leaders in the internet for many, many decades to come. All of the innovation that's being built on top of the Korean platform will benefit not just Korea but also the world. Next slide. Now, in Google's case, Google established our site in the year 2000, and in 2004 we actually established a business in Korea. We opened an R&D center last year, and of course we've now appointed heads of both the R&D center and our overall Korean business most recently. Along the way, we've done a set of strategic alliances, SK Telecom, LG, Samsung, Dow, with more to come, people who I've been meeting with today while I've been visiting your beautiful country. The point here is that Google is in Korea because Korea is important, and our commitment and the scale that we're going to operate in is just beginning. Next slide. This is a good place and a good opportunity to talk about why broadband matters. Does it mean that all of a sudden your electronic mail works faster? Well, of course it does. Does it mean that your phone is inexpensive? Of course it does. But what the broadband revolution really means is that we can change computer architectures. We can take all of the information that you keep on your personal computer and we can put that in a cloud. We can put it on a set of servers. Now let me give you an example that will make some sense. When I was growing up, I would take money and I would put it in the bank. And my mother told me that that the bank would keep the money in the bank, and when I needed it, they would give me the money back. When I went to college, I learned that the bank didn't keep the money, it would give it to somebody else. But I always knew that I could go back and get it when I needed it. But as I got older, I realized that not only could I do that, but I could use my credit card and I could go to any bank in the world and get money. Because I still think of that money as being in my local bank. So I don't have to carry all my money with me all the time. It makes perfect sense if you think about it. And the technological equivalent of that is putting all of your data, all of the data that you care about, your applications and so forth, on a set of servers that are run by Google. And the devices that you use, because there is a ubiquitous broadband, wireless, and wired network, can always get to it. So all of a sudden, you drop your computer, it doesn't matter, you just buy a new one. Your information is held somewhere else. Okay, well that seems pretty good. But there are more fundamental things at work. Historically, the way platforms were built, everybody would build on a single operating system. The new web is really a collection of services as a platform. This new web, of which Google is one of the participants, is a much deeper and much more powerful and much more broadly owned and controlled platform than anything that has preceded it. A very important change. In order for this vision to work, the applications that work on the cloud have to be just as fast, just as powerful, and just as useful as the applications today, and they are in development. They're in development in the United States, they're in development in Korea, they're in development all around the world. Next slide. So the first point I wanted to make is that there is a new model of computing coming along. There's a second point I want to make. And that point is that ads are valuable too. Google is in the advertising business, and we do something unusual. We take the position that advertising is valuable across all media, and advertising can be ranked, rated, and made more valuable. Here's an example. Is it better for you to put your advertising dollar on a computer, a television, a radio, maybe something new? We now have technology which will help you make that decision, and over a while we'll be able to actually make that decision for you. A huge change. Next slide. Here's a set of examples of advertising formats. But if you think of advertising as just information that can be ranked and rated, then we're sure that the current advertising is not done. In fact, there will be many new forms, new ideas, new ways of advertising that will be targeted at the person. When you watch television today, most of the ads that you see were not developed for you. In this new world, the advertising is personal, targeted at you, to be valuable to you, and if it's not done right, no one will do it. Next slide. In fact, to give you an example, in YouTube, Google uses our technology to allow viewers to rate the ads. So the advertiser can get some feedback that maybe that ad was a terrible ad, even if the president liked it. But if the users think it's a bad idea, don't show the ad. So all of a sudden, the notion of advertising as content that can be ranked and rated, big change in the way advertising works. Now, advertising is a very, very large business. Advertising is a $700 to $800 billion US dollar worldwide business, maybe larger. Much of it can be improved with technology for the reasons that I just described. Next slide. But the most interesting thing about ads is that if you treat them as information, they become more valuable, and therefore you in fact see fewer ads. In normal ad markets, they just keep giving you more and more ads. In this market, you'll have fewer ads, but the ads that you see will be more valuable to you. And that's a fundamental change in advertising. Next slide. So I've talked about the computer architecture and the importance of broadband, and I've talked about advertising. But what I really want to talk about is information. Google is all about all the world's information, and search is not a solved problem. There are many, many, many things that we have in our development to make search better. We ultimately want search to be able to tell you things about what you might want to do tomorrow, or here's a new idea for you, or here's some things for you to think about. But today we're still actually adding more information and trying to do better on our ranking, which is best in the world. Next slide. All right, next slide. Yes. Here's an example of a product called Universal Search, which we unveiled last week. It's obvious that information is in different forms. And so by taking Universal Search and by adding video and audio together, we're able to put it in one place. An example is you search for Rachmaninoff Concerto No. 3, for example, and not only does the information about the music show up, but a video of a famous performer, which is not under copyright, also shows up as well. So you can see it, you can hear it, and you can understand it. That's the principle around Universal Search. Next slide. We've talked about search getting more information, but it's equally important that search become more precise. Now, here's an example. If somebody says Paris, do they mean the city Paris, or do they mean Paris Hilton? You never know. If they say Hilton, do they mean the Hilton hotel chain, or do they mean Paris Hilton's legal problems? It's very hard if all we have is the word Paris or the word Hilton to answer that question. But it turns out that you are the best expert on what you care about. This is a product called iGoogle from Google. And what's happening is people are beginning to take applications, which are called Google Gadgets, and they're putting them together to provide a personal experience on Google that's extremely powerful, extremely effective. Now, interesting. What would you do with this? Well, eventually, you'll be able to have these gadgets, we'll be able to search into Google to get you the best information, but they'll also help you understand the information around you as well. This is a new model of platforms where not only do we have all the world's information, but we know what you care about, and you select how the information is shown to you and what you care about. People have focused on this as though this is bad. And you'll see criticism about this, and I think the criticism is wrong. Personalization is what people want, because the personalization gives them a better answer, it gives them a better experience, and allows them to live their life that much better. Next slide. These personal experiences have to occur on a personal computer, on a Macintosh, on a BlackBerry, on all the different phones people here in the room have. The phone revolution is even more notable because, you know, there are more phones being produced now than there are personal computers. The growth rate of the mobile phone industry is faster than that of the personal computers. There are more than 2 billion mobile phones in the world today. More than 1 billion new mobile phone users will come online in the next 3 to 4 years. Many of those people will encounter the internet first on their phone because they don't have a personal computer and they're not fortunate enough to live in Korea or the United States where these things are ubiquitous. So everything I'm talking about needs to be not just on the platform, but also on the phone, also on the device, and the many new devices that are being built here in the labs of R&D of some of the great R&D centers in the world here. Next slide. What is interesting about the combination of mobile and desktop is its usefulness in creating communities. In this new world, the killer application, the most important application, will be one that people add to. It will be one where people add information. It will be viral. An example would be that people will write an application here, and they'll give it over here. They'll take a video that you like, and you'll send it to her. And you'll say, I don't like this video, and she'll say, I love this video, and you're wrong. And then a community is formed. This access to personal information, phone to phone, will ultimately drive whole new social networks, whole new ways of people talking to each other that we can only imagine. Because people will constantly be saying, this is interesting. Have you seen this? Have you watched this? I don't like this. He's wrong. With all sorts of implications for what's going to happen with these networks as they get built. And all of us will be part of a few of these networks, not just one. And the networks will differ. But ultimately, I'll find information because my friend told me about it, or because I looked it up, because it showed up on my mobile phone or my personal computer. Next slide. So here's an example. People have maps. We have maps all over the world. But the best map is a map where everybody takes pictures, or corrects it, or talks about what's happening. We have a system, and in fact we're announcing today a set of tools where you can layer what are called mashups on top of all of these maps. So you can have one or another. We have things which are ride finders. We have things for apartments. We have things for climate change, global warming, security. My favorite one is satellite golf. You can play golf on every golf course in the world by the satellite, because we'll show you a picture of the golf course and you can wander along the golf course. The important point is the map is the basis for it, and then people add and add and add and add. Literally millions of these mashups are in the process of being created of every conceivable kind on top of maps. Next slide. So to understand how Google views this, we work on a user cycle. And our user cycle is very simple. The user comes first. The advertisers want access to those users, and the publishers of information want to be able to have advertisers to help pay for money, pay for the production of content, and then the users want the published content. This cycle we do over and over again, and it is the core of Google's success. It is the core of our growth, very, very successfully. Next slide. So Google, of course, is also a social phenomenon, which I'm proud to be part of. And I was thinking about what is the core thing that Google does that nobody else does? We create a climate of innovation. At Google, the projects are the size of a family, small teams. We know that groups of people make better decisions than individuals. This is countercultural in many, many societies, and probably also in Korea. You'll get a better decision if everyone sits at the table and debates it, rather than one person making the decision. Of course, you want to hire the smartest people. We give everyone a test. Salespeople do a test, programmers do a test, executives do a test. Keep a flat structure, encourage discussion and debate, be transparent as much as we can, and automate and reward taking risks. This is a formula. It works for us, and it would work for you in the high-tech industry if you chose to do it. Next slide. So if you think then of Google's evolution as a company, we started off as search, web search, now all sorts of searches. We became advertising, and then now become the most significant advertising force online, with more coming. What's a way of thinking about this? Well, I think of the internet as a platform, and I think of Google as everywhere. A goal, we could say, would be you'd want Google as ubiquitous as brushing your teeth. That Google is everywhere. That this platform of information is always available to you, whatever you're doing. Whether you're here, at home, you're in motion, you have a question, you have a thought, or you have an application that you want to build. That vision is a very, very broad vision. Next slide. Today we're announcing a new user interface for Google Korea. You can see it here. After much user testing, we think that the Korean audience will understand and prefer a more sophisticated Google experience, and it'll be available very, very shortly. There are other announcements that we're doing in the next few hours, and since we have the opportunity of being here, I thought I would actually show it to you. Next slide. And we'll get it started. When you go to Google Maps, you get down to the street level. We have been doing something different, which we're unveiling in a few hours in San Francisco. We took pictures of all the city streets of San Francisco, and from Google Maps and Google Earth, you'll be able to go down, and this is the scene that you'll see. This, of course, is the Golden Gate Bridge. You start off with Google Maps, and you go to something called Street View. Here we are, and you can see the picture indicates that we have images from, as you can see, San Francisco. We also have Las Vegas, a few others, and you'll see the map. This is a map of San Francisco. Everybody recognizes it. And you can see here we are going down Van Ness Avenue. We continue, here's another one, and you can take your person and you can say, I want to see what the street looks like. And here we are all the way around, and we go around and around and around. It's so good that you can see the street sign and when you can park there. Pretty amazing. This is, of course, Nob Hill. Here we are. And now we're going across the bridge. We're zooming around. Oh, let's take a look. In fact, that was the Brooklyn Bridge, showing that we've gone over to New York. This is the Broadway Tunnel. We're back in San Francisco, and here we are. And you can see the whole area. This is again Geary Street. And let's see what else. You can pan all the way around. This was done with cameras mounted on a particular technique, and we're now developing this imagery worldwide. It's the next stage of understanding the relationship between the globe and the individual. You'll be able to actually go from the view of the satellite, the view of the map, down to the street to actually see what it looks like. It shows you the power of this new model. Next slide. When I think about this new model, another component of this model is the ability to reach people who would not otherwise have access to information. I chose this as a representative image because we all know that mobile phones are going to take over these folks' world too. What's interesting is that in many cases, the mobile phone is now being used as a way of making reservations and of advertising and communicating. Everything I've said about the value of targeted advertising, the value of personalized information, is even more true in the real long tail and can have tremendous impact for these folks. Next slide. We have a number of distinguished politicians in the room, and I wanted to make sure that you all understand that information is important, and it's important that we work with governments about it. Governments have lots of concerns about the use and misuse of this information, but I can tell you that the impact of having citizens have more information is overwhelmingly positive. Now, for those of you who are voters, I can imagine a product that would simply tell you whether what the politician was doing was telling you the truth, because Google can remember what that politician said. Right? So we can say yes, no, or we can give you a probability, 81%, 79%, whatever. For those of you who are politicians, I have a different product for you. We have a product called Hot Trends, part of our experimental suite. And Hot Trends actually watches for things that are changing quickly, that are becoming very trendy. So you as a politician, every day, you can always be cool. You can always be on target. You can always know what your voters care the most about, and then you can decide how you want to deal with that information. So it works both ways. But overwhelmingly, it's better to have people have access to more information so they can make informed decisions. And indeed, in all of the democracies that I know of, including this one, the value of an informed electorate, I think, helps everyone. Next slide. I want to put this in context and then take your questions and comments. So in addition to the things that I've talked about, we have a lot of partnerships. Google gives out, if you will, more money that you can imagine to pay for partnerships who help us bring in revenue in our advertising business. I've mentioned some here on the slide, MPES and so forth, that I've mentioned before. The important thing is that Google does not operate by ourselves. We operate in an ecosystem of partners, and those partnerships are getting stronger. Next slide. So I was trying to put this together for you all to think about some principles. It's about innovation. It's about the end user, powered by partnerships. Be a global company, but be more and more local. And then make sure you focus on every device. Don't leave the phone out. Don't do it only for the phone, and anticipate all the other devices and all the other services that end users will want. And then you have a good strategy. Next slide. This allows Google, I think, the best shot of really fulfilling our mission, which, as you know, is to organize all the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Next slide. Thank you very, very much.